unpacking, above and below, and Big Potato TV. This is Staying In.
I am supercharged today.
Why?
I've realised that usually when we record this podcast, I'm usually pretty knackered at this point. But I had a power nap, and I usually don't do power naps because when I'm under, I'm under. And that's me gone for 8 hours. So I was worried I wasn't going to make it to this call. I had to set myself a little alarm even for like 20 minutes or so, because once I'm under, that's it. I used to sleep through like fire alarms at university and things like that. Very, very deep sleeper. But now I feel so wide awake now. It's brilliant, just buzzing from 20 minutes sleep.
Is that all you got, 20 minutes?
20 minutes power nap, that was it.
When did you have the power nap?
Look at my hair, Dan. It was literally about 20 minutes ago. I started it.
Just got yourself set up, sat in your seat, fell asleep, and then sat and went, oh, hello.
I'm a bit like a canary. Like, if it's pitch dark, that's it. I'm out.
Good night, Chris.
I sleep with something over my eyes. Do any of you sleep with something over your eyes?
Yeah, sometimes.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always done it because I can't have any little bit of light that will just keep me awake.
Do you all have eye masks?
Yeah.
I have like remember when I used to have really, really long hair? I'd keep it back with a buff. You know, that like neck warmer headwear you get into activity places.
Jesus Christ.
I use that. I have that over my eyes.
Oh my God. So Pete, do you just wear like a proper like eye mask, the shape of an eye mask?
Yeah, like a normal human being. Yeah.
Like a normal human being. So what I'm saying is, if someone was to walk in on you during the night, they go, "Oh, look at that man there wearing a very normal eye mask." Not, "Oh my God, there's an extra from Resident Evil."
Yeah.
Well, there's Daredevil before he got his suit completed.
Right.
Asleep. Oh my God. What's your nap strat, Chris? Someone who often, myself, takes strategy naps at work. We've actually got a room which was formerly called the Jules Holland room, but now has been renamed to the relaxation room. Was a really quiet space where you could go and have a little nap sometimes at work. What was your nap? What's your nap strat? Because that 20 minutes is like the perfect window. Anytime before then or after then, you're going to wake up feeling groggy, disorientated, out of sorts. It's all about getting that perfect. It's like 20 minutes or an hour and a half. It's basically that's the window, I think.
It's a knife edge.
Yeah. So what was your nap strat?
So the main thing is the darkness, as I said before. I have a little podcast on, but a very gentle podcast, no more than 2 voices, not any kind of loud, raucous kind of conversations back and forth, just very nice. Just almost like I'm in a room and people are talking and I'm just sleeping in the background.
So you don't listen to this podcast, Sam?
We're far too raucous.
I listen to this podcast when I shower.
Okay. All right.
10-minute bursts.
Fair enough.
And so...
In the nude.
Well, yeah, of course I'm showering. I'm going to shower fully clothed. And so I have the temperature not too warm. I have it a little bit colder, which I think is quite good as well, because I think if it's too warm, it's going to be harder for me to rouse myself.
I'm glad you said rouse.
And I'm going to be a bit dehydrated. So 20-minute bursts and a nice gentle kind of voice in my ears. And getting into bed, I think that's key. I don't sleep on the bed, even though it's 20 minutes. I get into bed. I think that's important as well.
Yes.
I cocoon myself.
Do you take your trousers off?
No, I don't actually.
So you sleep fully clothed?
Fully clothed with a tie and everything. And I do that thing. I don't know about you, but I do that thing where I tuck the end of the duvet under my feet.
Yeah, I love that.
That's nice. The only issue with that is that first world problems isn't really an issue, and we'll talk about what actual issues are, but I can't quite get the actual top of the duvet to get as high as I want it to be, because obviously now...
Right. What?
Well,
why don't you get a bigger duvet?
You can't get a longer duvet. You can get them wider, can't you?
No, you can get a longer one.
Can you?
Yeah. Most duvets are square shaped. They're the same length at the top as they are at the sides.
That's what I mean.
You should always have a duvet which is one bigger than the bed that you've got. Number 1 rule. Unless you're like some people I know who have a separate duvet each.
What?
I feel like this is episode 143 and we've finally run out of things to talk about.
This is gold.
No. Genuinely, this is very useful. This is very useful. So Sam, sorry.
So
what-
get a duvet one bigger than the size that you've the size of the bed
Yeah.
that you've got. That will cure the fact that for some, even though you're just tucking it under your feet, you can't quite bring it up to you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
should be able to tuck it under your feet and wrap it around your head.
Yeah.
That, go and test some out. You'll look fine doing it.
Yeah.
And another good it's not really a life hack, but it's a great feeling. Go to bed with your socks on, do it, and then take your socks off.
Yes.
And it's great.
Yeah,
that's
that
an
is
amazing
really
feeling. It's a great feeling. That kind of slow strip tease. I one thing as well, just I can only sleep horizontally.
What does that mean? What, like across the bed?
That's my curse.
Wait. Hang on. I think you're losing Sam and Pete here.
So no, what I mean is I cannot say sleep on a train or a plane. I have to be flat.
Oh, right. Okay.
I thought you were a vampire.
Well, you mean I go to bed with spirit level?
I can sleep anywhere.
I can sleep
I'm
anywhere
very
as well.
adept.
Also,
Yeah.
Chris, you are absolutely fibbing because you absolutely
Yes.
fell asleep sat upright in the hospital. So there's
I mean,
absolutely.
I mean,
no...
he did have concussion. I mean,
did have
there are
concussion.
mitigating factors here.
I've actually got photographic evidence of Chris asleep in a coach between Vienna and Budapest. So again,
the lies become untangled.
The lies are stacking up, Chris.
I think none of you will be surprised at this, but I did nearly have a little cry in bed the other day.
Okay, right. Well, is this something for the podcast, or is this something maybe for
Oh, absolutely, it's something for the podcast.
Like a gentle conversation over a cup of tea.
Yeah, and a sort of like cuddle, and it's going to be all right.
Was this a cry due to humour? Was it a cry due to physical pain or some kind of realisation?
Should we all guess what Sam was crying at, and let's see which one is closest?
Yeah, let's play the brand new game for 2022. What's Sam crying about now?
We say it's a one-off, but I got a feeling it's going to run and run.
And the jingle can be a bit more facetious than that. So it can be, oh, what's Sam crying about now? So in the past, of course, we've had such great hits as taking a shower, watching Gilmore Girls,
What was that advert you cried at?
the National Lottery advert, the Hugh Jackman smash hit vehicle,
Real steel.
Real Steel. I'll just tell you what it is.
Please.
So I went to bed early, and I propped myself up in bed, stole my wife's V-pillow, and I read from cover to cover in one sitting. It took me about 90 minutes, and it was great. I read my present that I got from Secret Santa.
Oh,
I read my copy of In, and I lent that to you today, Chris.
yes. So I look forward to shedding a tear this evening. Yeah.
And it was incredible. Absolutely lovely, lovely book. And it was kind of one of those experiences where a writer is able to, and it's one of the wonderful things that I love about all media, but especially I think literacy does this quite a lot, and comics does this quite a lot as well, is when you connect with a writer on a way where they're able to sum up or describe a way that you have been feeling or have felt, or describe a way that you act or behave before, and you connect with them on that level where it's just like, yeah, I'm like that too, and I've never been able to verbalize it or
wow.
contextualize it, but you've been able to really sum up like the way I feel in certain like social situations and how you interact with people. And like In just does that. It's remarkable. Like I could, it just felt like just having a conversation with myself, and the writer was able to really help me understand like a part of my personality, and it's such a really personal thing. And it was great, and then I think that's part of the reasons that led me to tears in the story because I felt so connected with it in terms of the character felt a lot like me in certain ways.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really beautiful book. If you've read stuff like Sculptor or especially Day Trippers, which is
it's magnificent.
That gets an annual read from me. It's magnificent. It's up there with something like that. It's like a really, really sharp graphic novel and something that could only be done in that style as well. Like part of the reason why I think it resonated with me so well was that what the character was going through and what they were experiencing and the revelations that they were happening, the medium that it was in just really hit home. Like, and that couldn't have maybe in a video game, but it couldn't have been done any other way. So yeah, spectacular. So thanks, Santa, for that. Still making my way through my little philosophy book of dinosaurs, or dinosaurs speak philosophy.
Philosophosaurus Rex. Well, I have been playing my Secret Santa gift as well, actually. Unpacking, which is the game that I got.
Yeah, I think that's the one we suggested you would suit you the best.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know all that much about Unpacking going into it. So the only thing I knew about it was a GIF on Twitter, or a little short video on Twitter, which was about picking up and putting down items. And when you pick up an item and you put the item down, it sounds different depending on the item that you have and the surface that you're placing it on. The audio work is it's a staggering amount of audio that must be in this thing. So to explain what Unpacking is, this is by a studio called Witchbeam. And as soon as they came onto the screen, I was like, I recognise that name. Why is that? And it's because I recognise it from back when I was a games journo, and I was actually chatting with some of the folks from Witchbeam, I think, over email, when they were releasing a game called Assault Android Cactus, or Assault Cactus Android, or something along those lines. And that was a top-down, third-person action game, shooter game, kind of like Robotron, that kind of thing. Unpacking is not that. Unpacking is a beautiful pixel art, incredible pixel art game about unpacking in a house. So the conceit is that it's kind of like, it's described as a Zen puzzle game about unpacking a life. And the idea is that you have this, each save slot is essentially a diary, and the game is going through 7 or 8 levels, something like that, of this person's, I would say, kind of early life. So from when they're very, very young to they've just had a kid of their own, and kind of gets to, that's kind of like the kind of breadth of the life experience that's being talked about. And it's about how people, that experience that we've all had of you've got your items, you've packed them all away because you're moving house,
Yep.
and you're unpacking it all.
Love it. My favourite part of moving house.
Right, and you see these items coming out of the box, and when we're doing it ourselves, obviously we've packed those items first, we're taking them out of those boxes, and there's sometimes when we're packing stuff in, we go, oh yeah, we still have that, why do we have this? Or, oh, do you remember when we did this? This is the souvenir that we got from when we did that. And there's a little bit of that, in fact, I would say a good chunk of that stuff, because you're always unpacking in Unpacking. You're always taking the stuff out. So you're having that experience of, oh, I wonder why they have this, because you're unpacking somebody else's life. It's one person's life, and it's genuinely surprising how solid a narrative they are able to weave from just this act. There's nothing else. There's no like cut scenes. There's no dialogue. You don't even get to see the characters really. I think you see the back of their heads at one point, but in a photo. But like you really don't know all that much about these characters.
The thing that's put me off Unpacking,
Yep.
playing it, because I like when it was suggested to you, I was like, yep, Perfect game. That sounds like to me like a game that I'd really enjoy as well. Just chilling out, unpacking some stuff. But I was really worried about how it would be gamified, and I felt like, and what I didn't really understand was I didn't really want to like watch a video to get the answers because I thought that might be spoiling a bit of the experience.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really find the answers to my questions anywhere. Was like, how is it actually a game? Like, is there only like one specific place objects can go? Is there like a right and a wrong?
There is a right and a wrong, but there are multiple places that each item can go. So it's presented in an isometric. I think it's probably isometric, but that kind of 2D, 3D visual, and you can rotate. Each object takes up a certain amount of space, and that varies depending on the size of the object. Some of these items can be stacked on one another, so you might end up with like some CDs, for example, and you can stack those on top. But by and large, you can put items pretty much anywhere for a theme within a room. There are some places that you can't put certain items. So, for example, you can't put shoes on a bed, but you can put a teddy bear on a bed. But you could put a satchel, but you might be able to put a satchel in a bed. Under the bed, or in a cupboard, or lots of different, or on the top of a shelf, like those. So there's quite a bit of variety. There isn't too much in terms of places you can't put things. There are some things that just do not go in certain places. So, for example, you are given different rooms. So you might have the bedroom and the kitchen and the bathroom. So while you might be able to get away with having like a figurine of a character on your bedside table, you couldn't get away with having them on the side of the bath, right? So there are certain, that's madness. So it doesn't really gamify it all that much in that way, right? Like there's not a huge amount of game here. It's not.
So it's completing a level, just unpacking everything and finding a place for everything.
Exactly that. Now, the thing that put me off about this game, luckily, after I'd played it, is kind of the plaudits it has and the way that a lot of people talk about this game. This is a game that I like to kind of talk about as like it's a laurel wreath game. This is a game that has been entered into 1,000 different indie festivals and has won, or been, chosen as a finalist and all that sort of stuff. It's got tons of laurel wreaths everywhere, and all this kind of stuff. The sort of thing that sometimes, jokingly, I will say, oh, that is a thing games journalists love and nobody will ever play, right? Like those kinds of games that are indie darlings that are very, very, very good, but either not quite the right thing or
don't have the mainstream appeal. Exactly
that. So luckily this is not that. This actually does have the chops to back it up. I'm not as in love with it as all of the flowery, like there are people talking about this game in ways that make it sound as if it's the next coming in terms of narrative, and it is not. It is a very well told story. Like very well told, very simply, and crucially using gameplay to tell the story. That's the really for me. That's the really exciting part about this game, because as you're unpacking, you go through different stages in life, and as you're unpacking, you see what made the cut from this house to this house, and you start to understand the character, where this character has come from. As a very, very young, as a child, and then up to, this other, through these formative parts of their life. And without saying, this person did this, you manage to understand who this character is, what they are interested in doing, what career they have, what they studied, the relationships that they've had, how they worked out, the kinds of foods that they eat, the identity of their partner, the sorts of media they like, the kinds of games that they're into. And this is all just through, in a lesser game, this would be a button that you hit to go and find a bio of a character, right? Like this would be like, this person is into GameCube games. Whereas in this, it's all done through play. And I think that is what's really great about this. That I think, it has all of these plaudits and all these very, very flowery, review quotes and all this sort of stuff. And I really don't think it really helps the thing. I think the thing that I love about it the most is that it manages to marry narrative with gameplay with a really straightforward, simple gameplay mechanic that anybody can enjoy, that is very, very relaxed, as you say, Sam. There's really no pressure. There's very little. There's very few rules in that way, and get across a simple narrative about a life, like quite a full life, and that is something that I've not really seen a whole bunch of in video games. Certainly not in a way that hasn't just been hammered over the head by really, really awful. Do you remember that time we went to the lake? Yes, I do. Like none of that. More looking at these objects and seeing where do these objects go in this person's life? What is the importance that they place on these items? It's really interesting.
I want to keep this momentum going.
All right, because you're so buzzed from your nap. Whoa!
I am, honestly. Look at the bed hair and everything. That you got me for my birthday. Gift you got me for my birthday.
Oh, which one?
Oh, you did so well. I want to say that again. You all did genuinely fantastically. Talk about being moved to tears. I was moved to tears by that, genuinely. I'm not ashamed to say. The Lego bonsai tree was just a joy to make. Spent an evening making that. It was beautiful. And this game, Above and Below, has just delivered fantastically. Not only because it was what I wanted a Ryan Lockett game. Ryan Lockett is this fantastic board game designer, but one of those rare mixes who also designs the games but does the art for their games as well.
Yeah.
And very distinctive art, and throughout all of the Red Raven games, you see that art making its way through. Pete, you and I spoke in the past. You'd played 8 Minute Empire, for example. And I've always wanted to own a Red Raven game, a Ryan Lockett game. So I was so utterly amazed when I unwrapped 2 gifts from you, 2 gangbuster gifts from you all. And one of these gifts was Above and Below. And Sam, you came round today and we played it with my neighbour.
We did.
And I introduced this to my neighbour and his daughter last year, and he really liked it.
Is this the one that you and I played, Chris?
Yeah, you played it, didn't you? You took it down to Bristol.
Yeah, we played this, Pete. Yes, sorry, yeah, because that's why we were talking about 8 Minute Empire. So we also played this in Bristol, Pete. It's essentially this is a relatively old game. It's 7 years old, and since then, Red Raven has built and developed on the storytelling mechanic, coupled with quite familiar game mechanics. So in this context, it's exploration, it's set collection. There's a kind of a city building element to it. And essentially what you're doing is you're settlers who are unpacking, I suppose, and you are building and developing a new village, but also exploring beneath the surface, exploring the caves and building down there as well. And you're gaining resources, you're recruiting people to join your village. And there's this lovely theme that runs through that, really. And you have your own village board, each player does. You're not in direct competition with each other, which is something I've really, really grown to like more and more in games, which is ostensibly a very Euro kind of aspect of it. And when I mean Euro in the sense that games occur outside of the Ameritrash kind of area, and generally the themes are a little less action-packed, a little bit more mundane, with very close scoring at the end, and they tend to be a little bit more relaxed in terms of their playing. And you have a set amount of workers, and everyone starts with that, or villagers, and everyone starts the same amount. And essentially, you spend a worker by moving them to the section really that shows they've spent their energy, and it allows you to do an action.
It's like a chill-out zone.
Chill-out zone, exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. I've used you for the day. Well done. You deserve to have a lie down because you've built me this new building here. Or, you've recruited this new worker. You go and have a lie down, say, for example. Or you've harvested. You go and have a lie down as well.
Everyone's having a lie down, aren't they?
And it sounds pretty simple then, doesn't it? That's a very familiar kind of mechanic. I'm going to spend workers to do things.
Yeah.
But what makes this a unique game, this is very much typical now of a Red Raven game, is if the player says, I want to go and explore, and what you do is, okay, great. Everyone around the table goes, okay, brilliant. Okay, great. I take the draw from the cave card pile. I place it down. Who's going to go on this exploration? I've got to send at least 2 villagers. Okay, you 2 look good. Actually, maybe 3. This looks like it might be a big one. I'm going to send the 3 of you down there. I roll a dice. I look on the chart, on the table, on this specific card. Oh, there's a number there. I pass the encounter book to somebody around the table. And I say, okay, read 127 for me, please. And around the table. And Sam was very good at this today, actually. Very good.
Thanks.
You can tell we've all got drama degrees.
Well, it's more, Dan will know this. It's having a very young child. You get very used to reading text in a very good way. I tell you what, if you want a riveting reading of What the Ladybird Heard, then you're welcome around my house.
Oh, what the ladybird heard is something else. The voices. Yeah. Oh.
So what I'm going to read from now is actually the one that's in the rule book. So this isn't cheating. This is actually from the rule book. So the player around the table would read this to you. You descend a deep chasm until you reach a wide, dark chamber. Rancid, cloudy water covers the cave floor, and soon you see glowing red eyes in all directions. You raise your lantern and realise that you're surrounded by giant rats, their brown, oily coats slick and wet. They close in, ready to make your party their next meal. Do you try to run and hide from the rats, or do you stand and fight? So then you're given 2 choices in this context.
And that's what the ladybird heard. Very similar.
So you can choose to run and hide, and that's explore 3, or you can choose to explore 4, or you can stand and fight, explore 7. And what those numbers indicate is how many die you've got to roll to determine how many lanterns you get.
How tough the action is.
Yeah, that's indicated by how well equipped your players are that you've sent down there, your villagers. And obviously you want to recruit villagers that are going to give you more lanterns for exploration, so you can go for those higher numbers. There is a modifier there. So say, for example, I went for explore 7 and I only actually got 6. I could choose to injure one of my workers and send them to the injured section of the board so I can succeed in that. I will succeed, but the trade-off is might take me a little bit of a while to get that injured villager back on their feet and working again. But there's something really delicious about that process where suddenly everyone around the table's involved and people are goading you. Yeah. Go on, push your luck. Yeah, you can get 7. You can get 7. Yeah, go for it. You can do it.
It's a really, obviously just played it literally this afternoon for the first time. And I remember on a podcast recently we spoke about, especially myself, how much I loved Dune Imperium and how I thought that was a really good example of a worker placement game, because these games tend to be a bit frustrating because slots fill up and someone takes something, or you don't have enough workers to do the stuff that you want to do. However, Above and Below has a really interesting sort of central crux, really, that was summed up for me, or really only came light to me when it was the final turn of when we were playing. And it's when I was in a situation where I'd done all the building I wanted to do, done all the recruiting I wanted to do, and it was just right, I need some money. Where do I get money from? That's not a worker's responsibility. I have to go on an exploration. And what I loved about that was it wasn't like that same worker placement thing of it's very sort of logical, where if I put a person there and I get this resource, then I can put a person there and trade in that resource to get the money that I wanted. It was, I'm going to go on an exploration. And I have no idea what's going to happen, but hopefully I'm going to find the thing that I need. And I really loved that that stripping back of the rationality and the logic puzzle that is worker placement games. It was just jumping into the literal dark of this game to try and find the thing that I needed, and I really like that.
Do you find that you kind of, as you're playing it, you start to kind of impress your own personalities onto each of the different kind of characters that you're playing with? Because as you're talking about this, I've not played this, but you're reminding me, and it's very, very, very different area, but you reminded me of Everdale, which we've talked about in the past, where I have kind of it's resources and worker placements and put them in different places, but I imbue them with personalities kind of naturally. Like this person is responsible for this, and they do this, and I have all this kind of stuff invested in them. It's stupid to do so, but you naturally do it. Do you find as you're playing that kind of certain characters that you're working with, kind of you have one of them, perhaps you kind of imbuing like he's the daredevil, he's the one who's going to push it, he's the one who's going to go on the exploration because he wants to do that, or are you not getting that deep into it?
You may do it a little bit, but the thing that's interesting about this game, and one of the first things I said to Sam was, this game will end quicker than you think it will. It's I think it's like literally like 7 rounds. It's like 90 minutes playtime roughly, and it's pretty quick. So you haven't really got enough time for that, say, which is both a blessing and a curse really, because obviously you don't want it to be too long because you don't want to feel like you've rinsed the encounter book, really. Yeah. So it's always tantalizing. I think that's probably the best way of putting it.
How big is the kind of the encounter book? So what level of replayability is there? Because obviously with certain games that are reliant on kind of like, if you think of like the card games, the likes of your Cards Against Humanity and all that kind of thing, those games lose steam very quickly once you've seen the answers on the cards. So once you've got through encounters, you're obviously you'll get enjoyment from them, but you're going to get less immediate kind of reaction to them. So how big is that encounter book? So how long will that last?
There's about over 200 of them, and each one has about 3 or 4 options.
Yeah. To be fair, like I would say that, like, you know, this is not the kind of game that you're going to play. I don't think you're going to play this game like, it's not going to become like a regular at the table, right? It's not that thing that you're just going to constantly play all the time. And it does feel on the slightly lighter end of Euro games. And I think the interesting thing about it is I almost see it as you know, this would be a really great way to kind of test the waters and see if somebody would be interested in a slightly more narrative focused game.
Yeah, I agree.
Or you know, and it also does have that, you know, that Ryan Lockett. We need to come up with a name for it because it's a mechanic that he seems to use all the time. The conveyor belt, where the conveyor belt approach of when you've got like a bunch of cards at the top. And basically, as you take one, the rest of the conveyor belt kind of moves along and becomes cheaper to purchase. This happens in 8 Minute Empire, and it happens here as well. And that mechanic is really good. Like, it is mechanically a really good game. And if you're not becoming like the person who knows all of the, you know, hundreds and hundreds of entries in all of the things, oh, I know what you should be doing here, then actually, like, nobody quite knows what it is that they're going to do as they go in. And as you say, Chris, there's loads of entries, so it's very rare you're actually going to see, you know, you're ever going to get a duplicate, right?
You know, and I like the idea that you're often having to choose the outcome of these encounters. Okay, do I choose between reputation, which is what the victory points are, or cold, hard cash, where I am just going to rob this person blind so I can buy that building, and then hopefully I'll do something good later on so I can build up enough reputation. And it's really interesting that, and I don't think I've quite worked out that kind of that tug and that push and pull between those two states, really. I find that a very, very interesting thing to wrestle with. And I do like that idea that genuinely the encounters only serve for when you explore underground. And it's like that sense, I've just come back from something, and now I'm going to just deal with the spoils of what I've got to build my little civilization on the surface. Of something really genuinely interesting about that. And obviously you've got the buildings give you little bonuses, and if you buy the right combination of buildings, you can kind of create engines that will kind of recoup large amounts of profits and resources. So it's got all that going on, as well as this kind of narrativized element to it, really. So it's a really interesting game, and genuinely a fantastic gift. Really, really made up with it. Everyone I've played it with has really enjoyed it. And again, as you say, Pete, it'll be one of those games that I'll get out once in a blue moon and have a great time with.
Obviously, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This is the first time we're all getting together post Christmas and post New Year.
Indeed.
Because to save our sanity, we block recorded recordings. But did everyone have a lovely Christmas?
Yeah.
Was it nice?
Yeah. I've had a nice relaxing one. Done a lot of reading. Done a lot of eating.
Yeah.
I drank a lot of beer. A lot of beer.
I bet you did. Me too.
Yeah, and now I'm on dry January, so which is going brilliantly.
Unfortunately for me, Christmas, the time when you kind of eat and drink lots of nice things, I got hit by a stomach bug basically from the 22nd to the 27th. So just the Christmas period. So I had about like 2 days to then jam pack as much good food and drink into me before hitting my diet on the 1st of January. So mine wasn't as fun as yours. I had Boxing Day in bed. Fun. Yeah, I hope that you all ate and drank enough for me as well.
Oh, I did.
Defo.
I did. Mm-hmm.
I played a ton of games over Christmas, absolutely tons, because my parents have got like a whole basket of board games, and
Oh, I love your parents' basketball games.
oh my gosh,
I've seen it.
yeah, you have, haven't you? You nearly fell into it, Sam. It was crazy.
I've been in it. Yeah.
There's games there that literally they will just wait for me to come back and play with them. So like we always play like 3-player Catan when I go and stay with my parents, say, for example.
Nice.
They love that game. My dad bought my mum a game, which I was explaining about this to Sam today, where it says on the title it's award winning, and you go on Board Game Geek, you type in the name of this game, and the first and only message on the forum post is, "What award did this game win?" Because I can't find any record of it. It's a giant map of the world with like a big grid on it, and essentially lots of different categories a la Trivial Pursuit, but they all are about you being able to go, okay, it's this square on the map of the world. This is where this is. Whether it's a capital city or a picture of a landmark, yeah, it's here. And getting points that way.
How accurate do you need to be?
I mean, well, put it this way. Oh, what was a good example? I think it was we had to find Lisbon, and I was in the wrong area of Spain, like the wrong area of the area of it. Literally, I was like a gnat's fart away from where it was. And you can't straddle squares, so it's like, oh gosh, where is this? So it's pretty unforgiving. And there's also a side of the board, Sam, the other side, the advanced side, where it doesn't have any countries on it. It's just literally a land mass, the continents. That's it.
I would be terrible at this game.
Yeah, I would not be good at that.
Geography is not my strong suit.
No. So the one, the only time they didn't get any recommendations from me when they bought a game. But my mum got her own copy of Quacks of Quedlinburg from my dad, which she's so made up about. She absolutely loves that game. Loves that game to pieces.
Yeah, I adore that game. Yeah, we the two sort of quote unquote traditional games that we played was we played Trivial Pursuit, which is always a load of fun. Generally, just like the trivia aside, but just how bonkers the mechanics of that game is. Like the fact that just navigating the board means that the game lasts about an hour and a half, and it just like doesn't need to, and it just absolutely blows my mind that the biggest problem with that game is just how do we make this longer and more complicated when it doesn't need to be? Well, I know, Jeffrey. Whoa! But we also actually, it was the first chance we got to play Snakes, because it's a game that really demands, a lot of people to play. And before Christmas, we really not had any chance to get a significant amount of people together. So Snakes is from our wonderful friends at Big Potato, who have never steered us wrong in terms of games to introduce and play with a family, like Obama Llama. We recently got sent the new sort of version of Obama Llama through, which I winged away to Dan to go and enjoy at Christmas. Don't know if you did, because you probably can't play it from bed. 20-Second Showdown, Herd Mentality, excellent party games. And one of their newest one is Snakes, which is from the mind of Philip Walker Harding.
Ooh.
Who we also love. Silver and Gold, Imhotep,
Right.
Baron Park, Sushi Go Party, all those wonderful, wonderful games. So Phil Walker Harding has made this trivia game of sorts called Snakes. And it's like a social deduction game split with a trivia game. And we tried to play it before with 4 people and it just didn't work. So when we had like 5, I think sort of 6, 7 people we were playing it with, luckily, over Christmas. And the idea of the game is that everyone gets a hidden role. They're either a human, a mongoose of truth, or they're a snake. If you're a snake, you get to see the answer to the question. Everyone else doesn't.
Okay.
And the object of the game is for the snakes to try and direct everyone else to get the question wrong, whereas everyone else is obviously trying to get the question right. So it's a really nice twist on the trivia experience for 2 reasons. First of all, the questions are kind of those questions where you think you should know the answer. So it's things like, what are there most of in the world? Like fish, fungus, or
hundreds and thousands,
or insects. And it's like, this is just like a perfect question where it's, I remember watching this documentary once where they said like fungus covers half of the world. Right. So no, it's got to be fish because look how big the ocean is and all this kind of stuff. So the questions are just ambiguous enough that it's very, very rare that anyone would ever come up with the answer, which is perfect, a perfect environment in which these snakes operate, where they can kind of be like, yeah, when you're saying fungus, I think you're absolutely correct. I think I saw that same documentary. Yeah, didn't you,
Aren't
John?
you clever?
Yeah, I did, mate. Yeah. And then as soon as anyone goes, yeah, I know the answer to that, everyone goes, well, that is what a snake would say. And he's just like, no, I'm telling the truth.
It's so interesting to have that with trivia.
So
that is a really interesting wrinkle to have.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And the second thing that's good about it is that it adds this social deduction area to it. Like there's not a part of the game where you have to like actively try and find the person. Like you don't get points for finding a snake, so there's never any moments where there's like lots of accusations or accusatory language, which can be quite frustrating in games like this, especially when you're the person who is like the ordinary human and you're getting accused of something, which is why there's a thing in this game called the Mongoose of Truth, which is a very overt symbol. You get this like little wooden mongoose. And so everyone around the table knows that you are legitimate and you're trying to get this answer correct. So you're almost like the arbiter of this like trivia back and forth. We did sort of house rules it a little bit. We found like the balance between snakes and humans was a little skew so we like brought down the snakes numbers and up to the human numbers, and we also imposed quite a harsh time limit in terms to answer the questions, and then we felt like the game worked a lot smoother. But yeah, it was, I really love trivia games, but as I said, some trivia games are either exceedingly old-fashioned or terribly mechanized in the case of Trivial Pursuit. So things like, and this is another big potato game, things like Mr. Lister's Quiz Shootdown and now Snakes
so good
have definitely rejuvenated. Yeah. It's just a nice rejuvenation of the and revealing the question. It's frustrating when snakes get it, when snakes have managed to convince you to the wrong answer. But those questions are so obtuse but interesting. You just want to know more. To like, yeah. So yeah, it's really, really
I
nice.
genuinely do think that everyone needs to have like a copy of the Mr. Lister game, like in their car, their glove box, say, for car journeys. I know that when I've been walking with you and Lisa, like we've just had them around, haven't we? We'll just ask them each other. We did it when we were walking in the summer. It was lovely. Sticking with the big potato thing, do you know what the MVP of our Christmas was? Which was perfect when you've got, like, in my case, same as yours, Sam, same with you, Dan, a young child running around. My sister, who loves playing games, she's got a 1-year-old son, couldn't really commit to a table with lots of moving parts there.
Sure.
It was Big Potato TV.
Yes.
Honestly, this literally made our Christmas so much more enjoyable. And it was always going to be brilliant, but this was great. So you don't need an app. Everything's all browser based, which is brilliant. So this is in the beta stage. So what this has, it has 3 Big Potato games up there. So Herd Mentality, which Sam has already mentioned up there, which you can play. Scrawl, which is their drawing game, which is basically like Telestrations, and Can of Squirms.
Oh, I love Can of Squirms was the absolute favourite. And it's really nice as well because like it got to a point, I think the other great thing about this game was it got to a point, especially on our Christmas, where we didn't want to sit at the table anymore, but we still wanted to play games. So we had this, like, where we were staying, we had this like lounge area, so it meant that people could just chill on their phones and we could all play a game together rather than like sitting at a table with stiff backed chairs where it wasn't as comfy.
Again, no apps, all browser based, and Beaton hopefully will be adding more of their stuff on there, such as say Snakes, for example, Sam.
I imagine that essentially what they'll do is copy sort of the Jackbox Party Pack model, which is essentially I think so. This is about 15 quid for these 3 games. I think you could probably get it for a bit cheaper, especially if you sign up to their newsletter. You get like 10% off across their site, and they do sales all the time. So I essentially think that they'll have like another pack that they'll release maybe for another 15 quid, which would be another 3 of their games or whatever. So you can pick up. I imagine they probably won't add stuff to it, but they will add other packs featuring some of their other games. Because I could imagine something like Mr. Lister working really well here. Snakes really working well on something like this. Yeah, it's great. It was really good.
And it works really, really well for those situations where you've got some people in the room with you playing on the devices. You can also who can play simultaneously with those online remotely via Zoom or whatever you use, like Teams or whatever. It's great. As long as you've got a device with a browser on it, you can play.
I didn't play really any games over Christmas other than Snakes and Ladders, which my little boy got for Christmas. So he's been loving that because he loves numbers, so he loves dice. Like I've got like from where we play RPGs, I've got like a load of dice in the office. So he always comes in and just likes to play them, just roll them and just count all the numbers. He loves it. So he's been loving playing that. But what I really love, especially kind of around the Christmas time, because at Christmas you get the bumper kind of Radio Times 2-week kind of festive galore. And what I like to do is go through all the films and pick out like old films that I've never seen. Wow! I see a shake of the head.
No. Dan, give us a list. What were you picking out?
Well, I was.
But I mean, like, you're the guy you said he didn't have a summer and winter duvet, but now but now we'd sit down with the Radio Times.
Ignore them, Dan. Ignore them.
By candlelight.
Come on.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the Radio Times. So, for example, some of the films I've watched that I'd not seen before. I watched All the President's Men.
All of them.
JFK, Abraham Lincoln. Watched them all. Donald Trump in Home Alone 2.
Yeah, so it's moving swiftly on. Mad Max had that,
Cool.
which then led me on to, I haven't watched them yet, but I've also now got ready to watch Mad Max 2 and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. So it's those kind of things that I really enjoy, and I've really enjoyed lately of kind of using these to spot kind of old films or films I haven't really heard of. So I mentioned to you, there's a more recent film called The Peanut Butter Falcon. Which is a really lovely film, which I watched, which I wouldn't have typically kind of seen because it was a very small scale film. I wouldn't have really gone to the cinema with it, and it would kind of the kind of thing that kind of passes under the radar. But I spotted it, thought it looked good, so I watched it. I loved it, and it's just about when I was younger. I used to watch like old films all the time. I would go to the shop like on the way home, like I might be working in town or getting a train home, and there'd be like a HMV, and I'd go in there and they'd have like all the shelves of DVDs, and it'd be like 3 DVDs for £10. So I'd buy like Taxi Driver and Scarface and these kind of really kind of old classic films, and I'd watch them. I'd love them, and I just kind of lost track of that over the years. And so what I do now is I kind of look at what's showing up I've already done next week's list, so I've already got some stuff kind of ready to record next week. And I'm just really enjoying kind of catching those old films because they don't come on very often. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it's the problem with kind of your Netflix and your Amazon and all that stuff. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's very difficult to find it. You have to kind of know. I remember there's a scene in the Aaron Sorkin written show, The Newsroom, where the main character, played by Jeff Daniels, is talking about encyclopedias and how he misses them, and he misses the idea of being able to just browse for information. All the information in the world is online, but you have to know what you're looking for. Whereas with an encyclopedia, you could just scroll through and just pick out a random page and learn something. And that's what I'm kind of finding with this, of looking at a list of films that you could say has been curated. Obviously, it's not, but it's kind of just a list of defined films, and I can just pick and say, I mean, All the President's Men I'd never seen, and it's like from like 1974, I think it is. And that kind of film always interests me. The kind of a film about people basically sitting around talking. I'm always, sign me up for those films because they're always brilliant, and you've got incredible performances. But I would never have picked that up. I mean, I don't think it's on streaming things, but I would never have gone onto Netflix and said, you know what I want to watch? I want to watch a political journalist thriller from 1974 about Richard Nixon. That's what I want to do with my kind of Thursday evening. But because I've got it there, and I've got this kind of selection now of old films that I can pick and choose when I've got a spare evening, I can, you know what, I'll put that on and just kind of watch it. And I'm really just enjoying kind of having that as a background. And I do that, like, Christmas is a fantastic time for films, when they, obviously all the channels are putting all their money into getting the best films for different stuff. I downloaded and watched Mary Poppins Returns again, because I think that's just a brilliant film. But you have all those different things over Christmas, of like the good films, the bad films, kind of the big budget, the small scale stuff. And that's what I did over Christmas. I recorded loads of stuff and then watched it when I was able to. I mean, I had free time. I was lying under a blanket. So that's kind of what I did. I didn't have time. Not so much didn't have time. I didn't have the opportunity to kind of sit down and have a board game, which is usually what I would do at Christmas. Always a kind of a big thing at Christmas. You sit down, you play board games, and you have kind of family stuff. Whereas, because I didn't have that, I did have the opportunity to kind of just like enjoy watching old films and learning new stuff, like learning stuff about All the President's Men. It's just like absolutely fascinating. I know things about kind of like the spy deep throat, which you kind of know just through popular culture, but actually this is I'm not saying it's the origin, because it's obviously the film, but this is where that whole comes from. You see scenes that you're like, I've seen this scene parodied like 20 different times. The scene of someone in a hood in a darkened garage having a secret conversation. You've seen it everywhere. Oh, this is what that's from. Okay, this is the original. I've seen this in Family Guy. I've seen this in The Muppets. I've seen this everywhere. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did to pass the time, and that's what I do kind of on a regular basis. And I really, really enjoyed doing it. If you have the opportunity, if you've got like the services to be able to just to scroll and record, it's a lovely way of being able to just spot those films and those things that you've not seen that would have passed you by just because they're old and they're not in general circulation anymore. They're not on Netflix, or if they are, they're kind of buried kind of deep in the bottom that you have to specifically look for it, as opposed to just kind of browsing for your film literature.
I remember being a kid, discovering old films as a kid in the attic of my parents' house under the hot water tank, big old TV. And I was like, oh, I've got half an hour. This looks quite good. I'll start watching this. I was watching Ben-Hur. That is a long film. A bloody long film.
That is a long film.
About 4 hours. And pretty bleak in place.
Yeah, you kind of need to know what you're getting in for.
Did you hear that? Did you hear what James Cameron said recently, where he was he said that his big fight back, right, for cinema against, well, not really against streaming services, but like to help what they see is like stopping the rot of streaming services, or like at least work with them. It's essentially release films like in 2 stages. So you could have like a film which is essentially 6 hours long, and you could put that on a streaming service, but then people can go and see a condensed version of that film.
Oh gosh,
that's only 2 hours long in a cinema.
That's what they do with audiobooks. You can get the abridged version and the unabridged version.
Yeah, so this is his big idea of like, where you could watch the 6 hour version of this film, and then you can go to this, or you could go to the cinema and just watch the 2.5 hour version of it.
The Cliff Notes.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Usually I would agree with you, but it comes from James Cameron, whose terrible ideas usually end up being exceedingly good ideas for some bonkers reasons.
Yeah, no, sure. But like, hey, do you want to watch either? Here's the 2 hours that actually are the movie, and here's the 4 hours of fluff in between.
But joking aside, isn't that what Peter Jackson did with the extended editions of Lord of the Rings?
Yes, and they were roundly like the extended stuff was like so a better example I think is the Hobbit stuff. The Hobbit stuff is how that was expanded, right? Like,
yeah,
and that it's trash. Yeah, I'd like to go and see a 2 hour version of that movie. I'd love to because of Hobbit, of the Hobbit trilogy. That'd be great.
But and for someone who's just recently finished watching all 8 hours of Get Back on Disney Plus, the Beatles documentary, again from Peter Jackson, like I absolutely adored that documentary, and like it's something that I recommend to each and every one of you. Anyone who's done anything in terms of making something creative or been involved with the creative process needs to watch that documentary, because it's fascinating actually seeing people work and being creative. But the thing is that I couldn't watch that again, but I would watch a 2 hour version of that documentary. So I see that there is some value in it.
Sure. But then, like, at some point, doesn't the argument then become Netflix goes, and also you can watch that same 2 hour version right here on Netflix as well?
Yeah, but the deal is Netflix are getting much more content that keeps the viewers stuck on their streaming service, whereas the cinemas get the shorter content that keeps people coming in through the door, which is how their revenue service works.
All right, do you want to hear some of the things that I've got hooked up for next week?
Oh yes, please.
So for next week, I've got The Sister Brothers, which is a Western starring John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix. From French director Jacques Audiard. I'm going to give you kind of the different flavors of what I do here. So that one, quite an interesting kind of, well, basically a good film. I say that because the next one on the list was Independence Day Resurgence, because I was like, I've not seen it. I loved Independence Day. It takes me back to when I was a child. So let's watch this terrible sequel. I've got The Girl in the Spider's Web, which was the newest film in the kind of the Girl with Dragon Tattoo kind of series. That was kind of the reboot with Claire Foy. The Sting, which again takes me back to the 1970s. Robert Redford, Paul Newman.
Good film.
Exactly. So that I've never seen that, but that's that. I mean, that's next week. That's on kind of free view as well. That's on ITV4. So kind of I would never be watching ITV usually, but I can say that in there. Other things, The Mountains Between Us, which was a film I always thought sounded interesting with Idris Elba and Kate Winslet about kind of a plane crash kind of in the mountains and like their survival. Choosing a particular time to watch that, obviously. Something like Kramer versus Kramer, which is a terrific film. And the last one is American Animals, which I mainly picked because it was in kind of the section of Best of the Rest, which just said riveting, true-ish heist movie, but gave it 5 stars. And it said Barry Keoghan. So I was like, yeah, I will enjoy that and watch that. So and that's the good thing, that it's given me a whole different widespread type of film that I can watch and can enjoy. And then I can just watch them as and when I please.
There we go. That was Staying In, another podcast that featured myself, Sam Turner. There was Chris Darby. There was Peter Willington. And there was also Dan, the film man, Frost. Thanks very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you. If you'd like to join in any of our discussions, you really disagree with anything we've got to say, or you want to hear a bit more about anything we've covered in this or in any of our shows, then don't hesitate to get in touch. Just search for Staying In Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've also got curated pages on Board Game Geek and Steam. So if there's anything that you've missed out on, or you want to find an episode where we covered a certain video game or board game, then you can check all the information there. If you want to send us maybe a recommendation of something that you've been enjoying, then why not send us an email, stayinginpod@gmail.com, and also stayinginpodcast.com is the website where everything is held. So all the contact information, all the archive of the shows, every single one we've ever released, and lots of more information is there if you need to find out anything more. It's all there. If you want to reach out to us or you don't, then you can pick and choose whatever you want to. But it's a pleasure having you along, and we hope your 2022 is going okay. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. So please do join us then on your podcast app of choice. And until then, do take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourself and those around you. Bye-bye.